The starship vessel of quiet judgment slowed as it came near the small blue planet. On its bridge, three beings from three different worlds stood together, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. The first was Ambassador Threll, a tall being with green scales and slow, careful eyes. He came from the Caldri, a species known across the galaxy for patience and old wisdom. The Caldri had been part of the Galactic Council for over 10,000 years. They rarely got excited about anything. The second was Commander Yis, a Shallier. Her body was thin and covered in a hard shell, and she had 4 arms that moved with quick, sharp motions. The Shallier were soldiers and scouts. They were the ones who went first into new places because they were fast and hard to kill. The third was a young Ternovian named Ika. She had feathers instead of hair, and small wings on her back that could not lift her full body weight anymore, since her people had grown too large to fly many generations ago. She was new to the council, still learning her place among the older species. Together, they were the crew sent to make first contact with the newest species to join galactic space, the humans of Earth. "Sensors show a large amount of activity on the surface," said Yis, her voice clicking softly as she spoke through her translator device. "Cities, radio signals, weapons too, many weapons." "That is normal," said Threll. "Every young species builds weapons before it learns wisdom. We have seen this 1,000 times before." Ika watched the screen with wide eyes. She had read every report about Earth that the Council had gathered. Humans had only left their solar system a few decades ago. They had only known about other intelligent life for less than 10 years. And yet, in that short time, they had already surprised everyone. "I read that their ships move faster than we expected," Ika said. "Much faster than a species their age should be able to build." "Luck," said Yis, "or theft. Perhaps they found old technology and copied it the way young ones often do." Threll shook his head slowly. "No, our scholars checked. The human engines use a method no one else in the galaxy uses. It is strange. It is new. That is what worries some members of the Council." The ship entered orbit around Earth. Below them, a large landmass covered in white ice came into view, the frozen continent at the bottom of the world, called Antarctica by the humans. "Why are we going there?" asked Ika. "I thought we were meeting the human government first in their capital city." "We are," said Threll. "But first we must look at something strange. Our deep scanners found something under the ice 3 days ago, something old, older than the humans themselves. The Council wants us to see it before we speak with their leaders." "Older than the humans," Ika repeated. "How can that be? This is a young species." "That," said Threll, "is what we are here to find out." The ship landed near a small human research station at the edge of the ice. Snow blew hard against the windows. A dozen humans stood outside in thick coats, waiting for the alien visitors, their breath turning to fog in the freezing air. At the front of the group stood a woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. She wore a badge that read Doctor, Elena Cross, lead archaeologist. Next to her stood a tall man in a military uniform, his face hard and unreadable. His badge read General Marcus Webb. The ship's ramp opened and cold air rushed inside. Threll walked down first, moving carefully on the slippery ice. Yis followed close behind, her 4 arms tucked against her body for balance. Ika came last, wrapping her wings tighter around herself against the cold. "Ambassador Threll," said Dr. Cross, stepping forward, "thank you for coming so quickly. We know this is not the normal way to greet visitors from another world, but we felt this could not wait." "Your message said you found something important," Threll said, "something buried beneath the ice." "More than buried," said General Webb. His voice was rough, like a man used to giving orders. "We found a structure, a vault. It has been down there for a very long time, long before recorded human history." Ika's feathers rose slightly with surprise. "How long is a long time by your measure?" Dr. Cross looked at her, and for a moment her tired eyes seemed to hold something like fear. "Our best guess is 50,000 years, maybe older." Silence fell over the group. Even Threll, who rarely showed emotion, tilted his head in surprise. 50,000 years, Threll repeated slowly. Your species has only had writing for perhaps 5,000 years, cities for maybe 10,000. How can there be a human structure 50,000 years old? We don't think it's human, said Dr. Cross. Not human like us anyway, but it has markings, symbols, and some of those symbols they look like early forms of writing systems used by ancient human cultures. Egyptian, Sumerian, even older ones that we don't have full records of. It's like whoever built this vault knew what humans would become long before we became it. Show us, said Threll. They walked together toward a large metal door built into the side of a research building, then down a long elevator that dropped deep beneath the ice. The walls of the elevator shaft were rough stone, cut by human drills in the last few months. But as they went deeper, the walls changed. The stone became smoother, more even, cut in a way that no human machine could have made it, not because it was too advanced, but because it was too old. The cuts were made by tools long lost to time. We found this by accident, Dr. Cross explained as they descended. A research team was drilling ice cores to study climate history. Their drill hit metal nearly 2 kilometers down. Solid metal in a place where there should have been only rock and ice. We dug carefully after that. It took months. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a massive cave, lit by human floodlights set up on metal poles. And there, in the center of the cave, stood a structure unlike anything Ika had ever seen in any council report. It was a great door, 20 meters tall, made of a dark metal that did not shine even under the bright lights. Around its edges ran lines of symbols, carved deep into the metal. Some symbols looked like stars, some looked like waves, and some, near the very center, looked almost like human letters, though older and stranger than any alphabet in use today. Yis stepped forward, her scanner device clicking as she studied the door. This material, she said slowly, I do not recognize it. It is not a metal in our database. Whoever made this either invented something new or came from very far away. There's more, said General Webb. He pointed at a smaller opening beside the great door, a hole just large enough for a person to crawl through. The door itself won't open. We've tried everything, cutting tools, explosives, even a small nuclear drill. Nothing marks it. But 3 weeks ago, one of our engineers found this side passage. It leads to a smaller room. That's where we found the archive. The archive, Threll said. This is what you spoke of in your message. Dr. Cross nodded. Follow me, but please be careful with what you see. It's already caused arguments among our own scientists. Some think it changes everything we know about human history. Others think it's a trick or a mistake or something we don't understand yet. I don't know which is true. I just know it's real. They crawled one by one through the narrow passage, coming out into a small round room with smooth stone walls. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal rested a thin, flat object, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. We call it the first page, said Dr. Cross quietly. It's the only object we found in the room that still works. There were shelves, once. We think this room held many more of these objects long ago, but time destroyed almost all of them. This is the only one that survived. Ika stepped closer, her wings trembling slightly. What does it say? That's the problem, said General Webb. We can't read most of it. The symbols don't match any known language. But there is one part, just one small section, that our best linguists have been able to translate. And when they did, they called me at 3 in the morning and told me we needed to contact the Galactic Council immediately. Threll looked at the glowing object for a long moment. Then he turned to the 2 humans. Show us this translation. Dr. Cross reached out with a gloved hand and touched a symbol on the edge of the pedestal. The blue light on the flat object grew brighter. Words began to form in the air above it, first in the strange, ancient symbols, and then, slowly in English, translated by a program the humans had built over the past 3 weeks. Ika read the words glowing in the air, and felt a strange cold feeling grow in her chest, one that had nothing to do with the ice around them. The message was short, but it was enough to change everything. To those who find this after the long sleep, you were not born on this world by chance. You were placed here and hidden so that you might grow again. The enemy that scattered our people across the stars has not been destroyed. It sleeps as you once slept. When you are ready, you will remember who you are. Until then, grow strong, grow wise, and grow quietly. The stars are watching, and not all of them are friends. No one spoke for a long moment. The wind howled somewhere far above them, muffled by 2 kilometers of ice and stone. Finally, Threll broke the silence. His voice, usually so calm, carried a note none of the others had heard from him before. "I must contact the Council," he said. "Immediately. This changes everything we believed about your species, Dr. Cross, and I fear it may change everything the galaxy believes as well." Yis's 4 hands had gone still at her sides, no longer scanning, no longer moving. For the first time since Ika had met her, the soldier looked afraid. "If this message is true," Yis said quietly, "then humanity is not a young species learning to walk among the stars. You are something much older, something that was hidden on purpose. And somewhere out there, whatever hid you, is still out there too." Dr. Cross looked at the glowing words floating above the ancient device, words left behind by someone, or something, from a time before human memory began. "There's more," she said softly. "This is just the first page. There's a whole vault behind that door we can't open, and we think it's going to take more than human tools to open it." Ika looked at the massive dark door standing silent in the cave behind them, covered in symbols older than human civilization itself, and understood, for the first time, why the Council had sent them here so quickly. Whatever slept behind that door would not stay hidden much longer. And the entire galaxy was about to learn that the small, young species called humanity was not what anyone had believed it to be. News of the message spread through the Galactic Council faster than any ship could travel. Threll sent his report through the deep space, relay the moment he returned to the ship. And within hours, the highest members of the Council were meeting in emergency session, far away on the Council's home station, a massive ring-shaped structure that floated between 3 star systems and belonged to no single species. The meeting room was round, with seats for representatives from over 200 worlds. Not all of them attended every meeting, but today almost every seat was full. At the center of the room stood the Speaker of the Council, an old being named Doran Vell, a Caldri like Threll but many centuries older. His scales had turned pale gray with age, and he leaned on a metal staff when he walked. Still, his voice, when he spoke, carried through the whole chamber without needing any device to help it. "Members of the Council," Doran Vell said, "3 days ago we received a report from our contact team on the human world called Earth. I have read this report many times, and each time I find it harder to believe. But the evidence is real. I will let Ambassador Threll explain, since he saw it with his own eyes." A screen lit up above the center of the room, showing Threll's face, sent from the human research station where he still stood, deep in the ice of Antarctica. "Honored Council," Threll began, "what we found beneath the surface of Earth is not something built by the current human civilization. It is far older. Our scans suggest it may be 50,000 years old or more. Inside, we found a device that holds a message. That message says humans were placed on Earth on purpose, hidden by an unknown group, to protect them from an enemy. It says this enemy is still out there, and that it has scattered other people across the stars before." Murmurs broke out across the chamber. Many different sounds came from many different throats. Clicks, hisses, low growls, high chirps, all species reacting in their own way to the same shocking news. A representative near the front of the room stood up. He was a Drenari, a species with thick gray skin and small eyes set deep in a heavy skull. The Drenari were known across the galaxy for being blunt and suspicious of others. "This could be a trick," the Drenari representative said, his voice slow and heavy. "Perhaps the humans built this themselves, to make us believe they are more important than they are. Young species have lied before to gain respect among the stars." "I considered that," Threll answered calmly. But the metal of the door and the device cannot be matched to any technology on Earth, ancient or modern. Our scanners confirm this. The humans did not build it. Someone else did, long before humans built their first city. Then who? Asked another voice. This one belonged to a Turnovian elder, an older version of the young scout Ika, her feathers fully white with age. Who would hide an entire species and leave behind such a message? We do not know, Threll admitted. That is why I believe the Council must act quickly. There is a locked door beneath the ice that the humans cannot open. Whatever is behind it may hold the answer. And if the message is true, whatever hid the humans there did so because of a real threat. A threat that may still be watching. Doranvel raised a hand for quiet, and slowly the murmuring chamber settled. There is something else you must all understand, the old speaker said. I have asked our historians to search every old record the Council holds, going back as far as our archives allow. And they found something troubling. Nearly 60,000 years ago, our own ancient records speak of a great war among the stars. A war so terrible that it destroyed dozens of civilizations across a large part of the galaxy. We call it, in our oldest texts, the Silence. No one knows who fought in that war. No one knows who won. All we know is that after it ended, entire regions of space went quiet and stayed quiet for tens of thousands of years. The room fell silent. If humanity was hidden 50,000 years ago, Doranvel continued, the timing matches the silence almost exactly. It is possible, only possible but possible, that the humans are survivors of that ancient war. Hidden away, on a small world far from the fighting, so that something of that lost people might one day return. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Cross sat in a small office above the ice station, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. General Webb sat across from her, reading reports on a tablet, his face grim. The Council wants to send a full science team, Webb said, along with a security force. They say it's to help us study the vault safely, but I don't like how fast they're moving. They're scared, Elena said quietly. You could hear it in Threll's voice when he called the Council. This isn't just about us anymore. If that message is real, this is about all of them too. And what about us? Webb asked. What about the people down here who actually live on this planet? Nobody's asking if we're scared. Elena looked up at him. Aren't you? Webb didn't answer right away. He set down his tablet and rubbed his eyes. I've spent 20 years in the military, he said finally. I've seen wars. I've seen what fear does to people and to nations. Now you're telling me there might be some ancient enemy out there that once wiped out half the galaxy, and we're the leftovers somebody hid in a closet for safekeeping. Yeah, I'm scared. There's something else, Elena said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small tablet of her own and turned it to show Webb a series of images. I didn't put this in the official report yet. I wanted to be sure first. The images showed close-up scans of the symbols on the great door in the cave. Look at this pattern here, Elena said, pointing to a section near the bottom of the door. And compare it to this. She swiped to another image, an old photograph of stone carvings from an archaeological dig in Egypt, and another from an ancient site in South America, and a third from ruins in China. Webb frowned, leaning closer. They're similar. They're the same core shapes, Elena said. Not identical, but related, like languages that come from the same root, even after thousands of years apart. Whatever built that vault didn't just leave humans on Earth and walk away. I think they left pieces of their own language, buried in early human cultures all over the world. Little seeds meant to grow into something recognizable, so that one day, when humans found the vault, they could still read part of it. You're saying our ancient myths, our old languages, Webb said slowly. I'm saying maybe they're not fully human at all, Elena said. Maybe some of the earliest ideas we ever had came from somewhere else, planted here on purpose, like seeds in a garden, waiting for us to grow up enough to understand them. Webb sat back in his chair, quiet for a long moment. If that's true, then everything we think we know about where humans come from is wrong. Maybe not wrong, Elena said. Maybe just incomplete. 3 days later, a much larger council ship arrived in Earth's orbit. This one was 10 times the size of the vessel of Quiet Judgment, carrying scientists from a dozen different species, along with a small unit of Shalier soldiers led by Commander Yis, and additional diplomats to help manage relations with Earth's many nations. Ika stood beside Threll on the bridge as the new ship settled into orbit. "The Council has decided," Threll told her quietly, "that opening the vault is now the highest priority. If there is a warning inside about a returning enemy, we cannot afford to wait, but we must be careful. If we move too fast, and the humans feel we are taking over their discovery, it could damage trust between our peoples before it has even properly begun." "And if we move too slow?" Ika asked. Threll was quiet for a moment. "Then whatever is sleeping out there may wake up before we are ready." Down on the surface, the ice station had grown busier than ever. New buildings had been set up in only a few days, using both human and council technology working side by side. Scientists from a dozen worlds now worked alongside Alina's original team, all trying to solve the mystery of the great locked door. It was Yis, in the end, who found the first real clue. She had been studying the smaller passage that led to the first page room, running her scanners over every inch of stone, when she noticed something strange about the walls near the entrance. "Dr. Cross," Yis called, her 4 hands moving quickly over her scanning device. "Come look at this." Alina hurried over, and Yis pointed to a section of the passage wall where the stone looked slightly different from the rest, smoother, almost polished, in a shape that could easily be missed unless you were looking for it. "There's a hidden mechanism here," Yis said. "Very old, very simple compared to our technology, but it doesn't respond to any of the tools we've tried. It seems to need something specific to activate it. Not a key, not a code." "Something else?" "What kind of something else?" Alina asked. Yis studied her scanner readings for a long moment before answering. "Based on the energy patterns, I believe it responds to a genetic signature, a very particular one." She looked up at Alina, her insect-like eyes unreadable, but her voice carried a strange weight. "I believe, Dr. Cross, that this door was built to open only for a human, not for any of us, only for one of you." Alina felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. "Then someone built this whole thing," she said slowly, knowing exactly who would eventually come to open it. "They knew 50,000 years ago that we would still be human when we found it, that we would still be here." "Yes," Yis said quietly. "And that means whoever built this vault understood humanity far better than humanity currently understands itself. The question now, Dr. Cross, is simple. Are you ready to place your hand against that wall and find out what they left behind for you?" Alina looked at the smooth section of ancient stone, waiting silently in the dim light of the passage, older than every human civilization that had ever risen and fallen on the surface far above. She thought of the message on the first page, "Grow strong, grow wise, and grow quietly," and wondered if humanity had grown enough yet to be ready for whatever truth waited on the other side. She stepped forward, took a slow breath, and reached out her hand toward the wall. The moment Alina's hand touched the smooth stone, a low hum filled the passage. The sound grew stronger, vibrating through the walls, through the floor, through Alina's own bones. Yis stepped back quickly, her 4 arms raised in a defensive stance, though she had no way to know if there was any danger at all. Lines of soft blue light began to spread across the stone, following patterns that had been invisible only moments before. The light traveled down the passage, out toward the great door in the main cave, and General Webb, who had been standing guard near the entrance, watched in shock as the same blue light began crawling across the massive door itself, filling every carved symbol like water filling old dry riverbeds. "Everyone get back," Webb shouted, though he did not move himself, too fixed on the sight in front of him. For a moment nothing else happened. The light simply glowed, steady and calm, tracing every line and symbol across the enormous door. Then, with a deep sound like a mountain settling, the door began to move. Not opening outward as everyone expected, but sinking slowly into the floor, disappearing into the ground beneath it, revealing a dark passage beyond. Cold air rushed out from the opening, air that had not moved in 50,000 years. Alina walked back into the main cave just as the door finished its slow descent. She stood beside Webb, staring into the darkness beyond. "It worked," she whispered. "Your hand opened it," Yis said, coming up behind her. "Exactly as I suspected. This vault was built for humans, only for humans." Threll's voice came through Webb's radio a moment later. He had been watching the readings from orbit. "We are sending a full team down immediately. Please, do not enter until we arrive. We do not know what is inside or what dangers it may hold." But Alina was already stepping toward the opening, her flashlight raised. "Dr. Cross," Webb said sharply, "you heard him." "I've spent 3 weeks staring at that door," Alina said, without turning around. "I'm not waiting for a committee to decide when I'm allowed to see what's inside." She glanced back at him, and there was something fierce in her tired eyes. "Are you coming, General, or should I go alone?" Webb sighed, checked the weapon at his side, and followed her into the dark. The passage beyond the door led downward, deeper than the first page room, cut through solid stone in long, smooth curves, as if the builders had shaped the rock itself like clay. The blue light continued along the walls, lighting their way, growing brighter the deeper they went. After nearly 10 minutes of walking, the passage opened into a massive chamber, so large that Alina's flashlight could not find its far walls. Rows upon rows of tall stone shelves stretched out before them, each one holding dozens of glowing devices similar to the first page, though most had gone dark, their light long since faded with time. But at the very center of the chamber stood something else entirely, a raised platform, and on it, a structure shaped like a great tree, its branches made of the same dark, unknown metal as the outer door, each branch ending in a small glowing crystal. "What is this place?" Webb asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the ancient silence. "I think," Alina said slowly, walking toward the tree-shaped structure, "it's a memory, or a record, maybe both." As she came close to the platform, the crystals on the branches began to glow brighter, one by one, until the entire structure shone with soft golden light. A voice began to speak, not from any speaker they could see, but seeming to come from the light itself, filling the chamber with quiet, steady words. The voice was not human, not quite, but the language, strangely, was clear English, as if it had shaped itself to match the mind of whoever stood listening. "You have found your way home," the voice said. "Child of the old people, hear now the truth we could not tell you before you were ready." Alina felt Webb move closer beside her, his hand near his weapon, but he did not raise it. Both of them stood still, listening. "Long before your son was young, there lived a great alliance of worlds, bound together not by conquest, but by choice. We called ourselves the Kindred. We were many peoples, many colors, many shapes, but one family, spread across 1,000 stars. We built, we learned, we grew, and then from the deep dark beyond the galaxy's edge they came." The golden light flickered, and for a moment, images formed in the air above the tree, vast shadows moving among stars, swallowing entire worlds in darkness. "We do not know their true name. We called them only the Devouring Dark, for that is what they did. They did not conquer to rule. They consumed to erase. World after world, star after star, the Kindred fell before them, and nothing anyone built could stop their advance." Alina's breath caught in her throat. Beside her, Webb had gone completely still, his face pale in the golden light. "In the final days of the Kindred, our wisest ones knew we could not win. And so, we made a different choice. Instead of fighting to the last and losing everything, we scattered our children across the smallest, quietest, most forgotten corners of the galaxy. And we hid them. And we hid the truth of what they were, so that the devouring dark would pass them by, believing there was nothing left worth consuming. You, child of Earth, are one such seed. Your ancestors were placed on this small world, and their memories were sealed away so that you would grow as something new, something the devouring dark would not recognize as a threat, nor as prey. You were meant to grow quietly. You were meant to forget until you were strong enough to remember safely." The golden light dimmed slightly, and the voice grew softer, almost sorrowful. "We do not know if the devouring dark still hunts the stars. 50,000 of your years is a short time for the old evils, but a long time for hope to grow again. If you are hearing this message, it means you have grown enough to open this vault, which means your kind has grown strong enough perhaps to face what comes next. But be warned, strength alone did not save the kindred. Only unity did, and even that was not enough in the end. If the devouring dark returns, you must not stand alone." The light faded further, the voice growing quieter with each word, as if the message itself were reaching the end of whatever power still remained to speak it. "We are sorry, child, that we could not stay to guide you further. We are sorry that all we could leave you was warning and not rescue. But we believed in you long before you were born, long before your kind ever looked up and wondered what lay beyond your sky. Grow strong, grow wise, and when the time comes, remember, you were never truly alone in this vast dark. Somewhere out there, if any of the old kindred survived as you did, they are hidden too, waiting just as you were for the day they are strong enough to remember." The golden light dimmed to nothing, and the great chamber fell into silence, lit only by the soft blue glow still tracing along the ancient walls. For a long moment, neither Alina nor Webb spoke. Then quietly, Webb said, "That's not a message. That's a warning of an extinction event." "No," Alina said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's more than that, it's a promise. Somewhere out there, other worlds might be hiding too. Other people like us, waiting to remember who they really are." By the time Threll, Yis, and Ika arrived in the chamber, along with a full science team from the council ship, the golden tree had gone dark and silent once more, its message already given. Alina told them everything, word for word as best she could remember it, while human and alien scientists alike recorded her account and began scanning every inch of the vast chamber for more information. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Threll spoke. "This confirms what our own historians feared," he said gravely. "The silence in our oldest records, the end of an ancient alliance among the stars. If this account is true, then long before any species alive today rose to build their first cities, an entire galactic civilization was destroyed by something none of us have ever encountered. And it might still be out there," Ika added quietly, her feathers pressed flat against her body in a gesture Alina had learned meant fear among her people. "We must inform the full council at once," Threll said. "This is no longer only about Earth or about humanity's history. If the devouring dark is real, and if it still hunts the stars, then every civilization in this galaxy is in danger, whether they know it or not." Yis stepped forward, her expression hard and focused, the fear from a moment ago replaced by something more like grim determination. "There is something else to consider," she said. "The message called Earth a seed. It said there might be other seeds, other hidden worlds, other survivors, scattered across the galaxy just as humanity was. If we can find them, we may be able to build something the ancient kindred never had time to finish. A true, unified defense, ready before the enemy returns instead of after." Threll nodded slowly. "Then that is where we must begin. We must search for other seeds. And we must prepare humanity and the rest of the galaxy for the possibility that peace may not last much longer." General Webb looked around at the vast, silent chamber, filled with row after row of dark, forgotten devices, each one perhaps holding pieces of a story 50,000 years old. "There's a whole library here," he said slowly. "Maybe there's more than just warnings. Maybe there's knowledge too, weapons, defenses, ways to fight back if it ever comes to that." Alina looked at the golden tree, now dark and quiet at the center of the chamber, and thought of the words it had spoken. "You were never truly alone in this vast dark." "Then we'd better start reading," she said. "Because if that thing really is still out there, I don't think we have as much time as we'd like to think." Above them, far beyond the ice and stone, the vessel of quiet judgment and the larger council ship hung silently in Earth's orbit, carrying news that would soon reach every corner of council space. News that would force 200 worlds to look up at the stars with new and different eyes, wondering, for the first time in tens of thousands of years, if the old peace among the stars was truly as safe as everyone had believed. 6 months passed after the vault beneath Antarctica opened its doors. In that time, the news had spread across every corner of Council space, carried by fast ships and faster rumors, until nearly every civilization among the stars had heard some version of the story. The humans of Earth were not a young species at all, but the last hidden seed of an ancient and powerful people, destroyed long ago by a terror from beyond the galaxy's edge. Not everyone believed it, not everyone wanted to. On the Council station, the round meeting chamber was fuller than it had ever been. Representatives from every member world had come in person this time, none willing to trust such important matters to a recorded message. Doran Vell stood once more at the center, older and more tired than before, but his voice was as steady as ever. 6 months ago, he said, we learned that an ancient threat called the Devouring Dark may still exist somewhere beyond known space. Since then, our science teams, working alongside human researchers, have studied the archive beneath Earth's ice without pause. Ambassador Threll will now share what they have found. Threll stepped forward. He looked different than he had 6 months ago, thinner, with new lines around his eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. Beside him stood Alina Cross, invited to speak before the Council as the first human ever to do so. We have read perhaps 1/10 of the archive so far, Threll began. The language is complex and much of it is damaged by time. But what we have learned is this. The ancient kindred were not one species, but hundreds, joined together freely, sharing knowledge and technology between them. Before their fall, they had built defenses far beyond anything the current Council possesses. And still, it was not enough. A murmur ran through the chamber. We have also learned, Threll continued, that Earth was not the only seed planted by the kindred before their end. The archive contains partial star maps, damaged, incomplete, but real, showing dozens of other possible locations where hidden seeds may have been placed. Small, quiet worlds, much like Earth once was, where survivors may have been hidden away in the same manner. Alina stepped forward to speak, her voice a little unsteady at first, unused to addressing so many different species at once. Some of those locations, she said, are within Council space already, worlds some of you may already know, worlds that might contain other hidden peoples just like humanity, still unaware of what they truly are. The Drenari representative, the same blunt, suspicious being from 6 months before, rose to his feet. And how do we know this is not simply a story built to gain sympathy? He asked. A convenient tale, giving the humans a special place above the rest of us, at a time when many worlds already fear their strange new technology and their strange fast growth. Because I have no reason to lie to you, Alina said, meeting his eyes directly, her voice growing steadier. I did not ask to find this vault. I did not ask for my species to be some ancient survivor of a war none of us remember. I only wanted to study old ice. Whatever we are, we did not choose it, any more than your species chose to be born Drenari, or mine chose to be born human. The only choice any of us truly have is what we do with the truth, now that we know it. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Even the Drenari representative said nothing more, though his heavy face remained unconvinced. Doran Vell raised his staff gently, calling for order. Whether or not every member trusts this account fully, he said, we cannot ignore the danger it describes. If even a small chance exists that a threat capable of destroying an entire ancient alliance still lives somewhere beyond our borders, the Council must prepare. I propose we begin searching the locations marked on the recovered star maps to learn if other hidden seeds truly exist. Slowly, one by one, the Council members raised their hands, or their claws, or whatever limbs their bodies possessed in agreement. Even the Drenari representative, after a long pause, raised his hand as well. The vote passed, the search for the other seeds would begin. 3 weeks later, a joint fleet of Council ships and 2 new human vessels, built with knowledge shared from the vault, faster and stronger than anything Earth had built before, set out toward the first of the marked locations. A small, quiet planet on the far edge of Council space, home to a species called the Orlane gentle farmers who had never shown any sign of advanced technology or ancient secrets. Ika was aboard one of the lead ships, no longer the nervous young scout she had been 6 months ago. She had spent much of the past half-year working alongside Alina Cross, learning about humans and, in turn, teaching Alina about the wider galaxy. The two had become close friends, in the strange way that shared danger often brings people together, no matter how different their bodies or their birthplaces might be. "Do you really think they'll find something?" Ika asked, standing beside Alina on the observation deck as the ship approached the Orlane homeworld. "I don't know," Alina admitted. "But if the star maps are right, this world has all the right signs. A quiet, peaceful people, isolated from most galactic contact until recently, on a planet that shows small traces of very old, very strange energy readings deep underground. It's almost exactly like Earth was, before we found our own vault." As the fleet entered orbit, sensors aboard the human ships picked up something the Council scanners had missed: faint energy readings coming from beneath a mountain range on the planet's largest continent. Readings that matched, almost perfectly, the signature of the vault beneath Antarctica. When Council and human teams landed and approached the site, guided by the Orlane's own confused and curious leaders, they found what they were looking for. Another door, smaller than Earth's, but built from the same strange dark metal, covered in similar ancient symbols. The Orlane leader, a small being with soft fur and gentle round eyes, stared at the door with a look of complete shock. "This has always been here," she said quietly, through her translator device. "Our old stories speak of a sleeping mountain that must never be disturbed. We believed it was only a myth, a way to teach children not to wander too far from home." "It's not a myth," Alina said gently. "It's real, and I think somewhere behind that door there might be answers about who your people really are." The Orlane leader looked at the vast door for a long moment, fear and wonder mixing plainly across her gentle features. "Will it change us?" she asked. "Will it change what it means to be Orlane?" Alina thought of her own answer to that question, 6 months ago, standing in front of a very similar door. "I think," she said carefully, "it will show you who you always were, underneath everything you believed about yourselves. That's not the same as changing you. It's more like finally seeing your whole reflection instead of just a small piece of it." Back on the Council station, Threll met privately with Doran Vell in the old speaker's quiet study, away from the noise and pressure of the full chamber. "The search has already found a second seed within weeks," Threll said. "If there are truly dozens of locations on those star maps, we may find many more before the search is finished." "That is good news in one sense," Doran Vell said, settling slowly into his chair. "But it also means the danger described in the archive is very likely real. The kindred did not scatter their children in fear of nothing. If we find dozens of hidden seeds, it means the devouring dark once threatened dozens of civilizations at once. A threat that large does not simply disappear." "There is something else troubling me," Threll admitted. "The humans have grown remarkably quickly since gaining access to the archive's knowledge. Their new ships, built in only a few months, already rival technology it took some Council members centuries to develop. If this pace continues, humanity may soon possess capabilities beyond what many older species consider comfortable." Doran Vell was quiet for a long moment, considering his old friend's words carefully. "Are you afraid of them, Threll?" Threll hesitated before answering honestly. "A little," he admitted. "Not of Alina Cross, or General Webb, or the humans I have come to know personally. They have shown honesty and courage since the beginning. But a whole species, growing that quickly, carrying memories of an ancient war we do not fully understand. It would be foolish not to feel some caution." "Then we must walk a careful path," Doran Vell said. "We must remain close enough to humanity to guide their growth wisely, and honest enough that they never feel we see them only as a danger to be managed, rather than partners to be trusted. If the old records are true, unity was the only thing that ever gave the kindred any chance at all. We cannot afford to let fear divide us now, of all times." Threll nodded slowly, though the worry did not fully leave his eyes. "I hope you are right, old friend. Because if the humans ever come to believe the Council fears them more than it trusts them, I do not think we will find them nearly so patient as they have been so far. Far below, on the surface of the Orlane homeworld, the new door stood waiting, silent and dark, holding within it another piece of an ancient puzzle that stretched across the whole galaxy. A puzzle that, piece by piece, was slowly beginning to reveal the shape of a threat none of them were yet ready to face. And somewhere far beyond the edges of Council space, in the deep dark between the stars, something ancient stirred, disturbed for the first time in 50,000 years by the faint, growing light of awakening seeds calling softly to one another across the void. A full year had passed since Alina Cross first placed her hand against the cold stone wall beneath the Antarctic ice. In that time, the search for hidden seeds had found 12 more worlds, each one holding its own quiet door, its own sleeping archive, its own people who had never known the true weight of their history. Some worlds welcomed the discovery with open curiosity. Others, like the Orlane, needed time and gentle patience before they were ready to open their doors at all. But slowly, one by one, the scattered children of the kindred were beginning to wake. And then, on a quiet morning that would later be remembered across 100 worlds, the silence ended. It happened at the edge of Council space, near a lonely system marked on the old star maps not as a seed, but as something else entirely, a warning marker, one the human and Council scientists had not yet fully understood. A small research outpost had been placed there months earlier, studying strange energy readings that echoed faintly from deeper in the dark beyond. The first sign was a loss of communication. Then, silence. Then, 3 days later, a single garbled distress signal reached the nearest Council relay station, carrying only a handful of clear words before the signal died completely. Not alone, it's here. It remembers us. Within hours, every ship available raced toward the outpost's location, human and Council vessels moving together for the first time as a single combined fleet, faster and more coordinated than either side could have managed only a year before. Alina Cross stood on the bridge of the human flagship, the constant hope, beside General Webb, now promoted to lead humanity's small but growing defense forces. Threll and Ika stood nearby, having insisted on joining the human ship rather than staying behind on a Council vessel. "Sensor range in 2 minutes," the ship's pilot called out. "What are we walking into?" Webb asked quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "I don't know," Alina admitted. "But if that signal is right, and something out there really does remember us," she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Then the message in the vault was true," Ika said softly, finishing it for her. "The devouring dark never truly disappeared, it only slept the same way we did." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and for a moment the bridge was silent, every eye fixed on the main screen. At first there was only empty space, and the small, dark shape of the ruined research outpost, drifting silently among the stars. But as the sensors sharpened their focus, something else came into view, something vast and dark and utterly still, hanging motionless just beyond the outpost, like a shadow given shape and substance, blotting out the stars behind it. That's not a ship," Webb said slowly, staring at the screen. "That's too big to be a ship." "Scanners are having trouble reading it," the ship's science officer reported, her voice tight with tension. "It's not reflecting energy the way it should. It's almost like it's absorbing our scans instead of bouncing them back." Threll's voice when he spoke was quieter than Alina had ever heard it. "I believe," he said slowly, "we have found the devouring dark." For a long, terrible moment, no one on the bridge moved. Then, without warning, the vast shadow shifted. It did not move like a ship, with engines and direction. It simply seemed to unfold, spreading wider across the black of space, as if slowly waking from a very long sleep and stretching itself for the first time in 50,000 years. A new signal began to reach the fleet's sensors. Not words, not any language they recognized, but a slow, deep pulse felt more than heard, resonating through the hulls of every ship in the fleet at once. "It's trying to communicate," the science officer said, her voice shaking slightly. I think it's asking something. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the golden light of the tree-shaped archive far beneath Earth's ice, remembering the sorrow in its ancient voice as it spoke of the kindred's fall. It's asking if we're afraid, she said quietly, though she had no clear way to know how she understood the pulse, only a strange certainty settling deep in her chest. It wants to know if we remember. Webb turned to her sharply. Remember what? Being hunted, Elena said. Being erased. It wants to know if the fear is still in us after all this time. Ika's feathers had gone completely flat against her body, a sign of deep fear among her people, and yet her voice, when she spoke, was steady. Then we must answer it honestly. Whatever the cost. Threll looked toward Elena, and then toward Webb, something like quiet respect passing behind his old, careful eyes. This is not our decision alone to make, he said. This is a decision for all of us together, human, Kaldrai, Shalier, Ternovian, and every other people the Council represents. If we face this threat with fear alone, we may already have lost. But if the old message was true, unity was the one thing the ancient kindred never quite achieved before their fall. Perhaps that is the answer this creature is truly waiting to hear. Webb took a slow breath, glancing around the bridge at the mixed crew standing together, human and alien, side by side, all watching the same vast shadow drifting silently among the stars. Open a channel to the full fleet, he said. Every ship, every species. I want everyone to hear this at once. Moments later, his voice carried out across the combined fleet, broadcast to human and council ships alike, and translated instantly into a dozen different languages for a dozen different peoples, all listening together for the first time to a single, unified voice. This is General Webb aboard the Constant Hope. A year ago, most of us didn't know each other existed. Some of us feared each other. Some of us still do, a little, and that's all right. That's honest, at least. But right now, we're facing something that doesn't care what species we are, or how long we've known each other, or how new our friendship might be. It only cares whether we're still afraid, the way our ancestors were, long enough ago that most of us forgot the fear was ever real. He paused, glancing at Elena, then at Threll and Ika standing beside him. I won't pretend I'm not afraid, Webb continued. But I've spent the last year working beside people who aren't like me at all, and I've learned something. Fear doesn't go away by hiding from each other. It only goes away when we stop standing alone. So here's my answer to whatever that thing out there is truly asking. We remember, we're still afraid, but we're not hiding anymore, and this time we're not scattered, we're standing together. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. The vast shadow remained still, hanging silently among the stars, its slow pulse continuing to wash faintly over the fleet's sensors. And then slowly, the pulse began to change. It grew softer, quieter, less like a question, and more strangely like something closer to acknowledgement. The great shadow shifted once more, folding back in on itself, retreating slowly into the deep dark beyond the system's edge, until at last it vanished from the fleet's sensors entirely, leaving nothing behind but empty space and a silence that felt, for the first time in 50,000 years, less like an ending and more like a pause. Weeks later, back on the council station, the full chamber gathered once more, quieter and more thoughtful than it had ever been before. Doran Vell stood at the center, looking older than ever, and yet somehow his old eyes carried something that looked almost like hope. We do not know if the devouring dark will return, he told the assembled representatives. We do not know if what we encountered at the edge of our space was its full strength, or only a fragment, testing the waters after a long sleep. But we know this. For the first time since the fall of the ancient kindred, a combined fleet of many different peoples stood together against it, and it withdrew rather than attack. He looked toward Elena Cross and General Webb, seated among the human delegation, and toward Threll and Ika nearby. The first page of Earth's hidden archive told us that humanity was placed among the stars to grow strong and wise and to grow quietly, until the time came to remember who they truly were, Doran Vell said. That time has come, not only for humanity, but for every hidden seed we have found this past year, and perhaps for every civilization within Council space. We stand now at the edge of a truth larger than any one world. The old kindred fell because unity came too late. We have been given a chance the kindred never had, the chance to build that unity now, before the true test arrives, rather than after. He raised his old staff gently, and the entire chamber rose together, human and alien alike, standing in quiet, shared silence for a long moment, honoring both the fear they still carried and the fragile, growing hope that had begun to take root among them. Later that evening, Alina stood alone on an observation deck aboard the Council station, looking out at the vast field of stars stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Ika joined her quietly after a while, standing beside her without speaking for a long moment. "Do you think it will come back?" Ika finally asked. "I don't know," Alina admitted. "But I think whatever happens, we're not facing it the way the kindred did. We're not scattered anymore. We're not alone." Ika nodded slowly, her feathers relaxing slightly, no longer flat with fear. "The first page of your archive changed everything," she said. "Not just for Earth, for all of us." Alina smiled softly, watching the distant stars, thinking of the golden light beneath the ice, the ancient voice that had spoken of children scattered across the galaxy, hidden and waiting to grow strong enough to remember. "Maybe that's what it was always meant to do," she said quietly. "Not just tell us who we used to be. Maybe it was always meant to bring us all together, exactly when we'd need each other the most." Far below them, and far beyond, across 100 worlds now waking slowly to truths hidden deep beneath their own soil and stone, the quiet work of remembering continued, seed by seed, world by world, drawing the scattered children of an ancient people slowly back together, ready, this time, to face whatever waited for them among the stars, not as strangers, but as one.